Bulletproof Radio, a state of high performance.
Hey, it's Dave Asprey with Bulletproof Radio. Today's cool fact of the day is that more than 17.4 million Americans are food insecure. It means they have limited access to adequate food and nutrition because of price or geography. And only about 6.9 million Americans are food secure. And those come from a real data source, but I gotta wonder, what about the other people who are not food insecure and food secure? Because we have like 300 million people here and we only have 6.9 and 17.4. So there must be a big middle of people that are like food-ish, insecure-ish. But whatever it is, there are giant numbers of people who live nowhere near a grocery store that even has fresh vegetables. So like seeing an apple versus a can of applesauce is a rare occurrence, and that's pretty scary. Before we get going on today's episode, if you haven't had a chance to check out Bulletproof the Cookbook, it's time. This has been a phenomenally successful book. It just came out, and it's got 125 bulletproof recipes using tons of really, really good ingredients that support your biological function, that support your performance every day. There are amazing desserts I've served at Yahoo's headquarters recently. There are just amazing meals. Cauliflower bacon mash is one of my favorites. And you'll find some amazing good stuff in there. So check it out. You can buy it on the Bulletproof website. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it at Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Today's guest is Gunnar Lovelace, who's a social good serial entrepreneur who founded Love Heals, a conscious jewelry company that funded the planting of 1.5 million trees and sponsored 500,000 malnourished children. And he's currently the co-CEO of Thrive Market, which is an online wholesale buying club whose mission is to make natural and organic eating more affordable for everyone. He's also a bioactivist. Gunnar, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Love your work and excited to be on the show.
Likewise, we've had a chance to meet in person lots of times, and we're supporters of each other's companies, and so it's an honor to get to have you on the show. Your story is pretty unique. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. It is, you're a high performance entrepreneur, and I want to pick your brain about what you're doing with your mission for healthy food, and I also want to pick your brain about what you do for your own biology to support it. So kind of two directions that our listeners would be interested in.
Put me to work. I'm at your service.
All right. One of the things that surely affects your decision to start Thrive Markets is that you were raised by a single Latino mom. You lived here legally in the U.S. for 8 years.
Yeah.
And your mom wanted to feed you really healthy as well as she could. But I mean, let's face it, finances, no matter where you are, food costs money, right? And healthy food costs more money right now. So when you were a kid, you maybe didn't have enough of that. Did that shape your view of the world? Did that shape why you decided to start Thrive? Why you fed 50,000 people?
Absolutely. I mean, it's growing up really poor and seeing how hard she struggled to make healthy choices was a primary impulse for me in why we started the business. And there were months at a time where we lived off of rice because that's all we could afford. And so it's been a lifelong interest of mine. And one of the things that I was really fortunate with is that, in spite of our financial adversity, my mother was well educated. So she did know that eating healthy was really important. And so she made a lot of choices that prioritized that opportunity, even though she was struggling financially. And so that when she remarried, my stepfather was running a food co-op, which we still run today. And so we got exposed to a group buying model through a food co-op. And that was really how the genesis of Thrive came about, was seeing a 21st century, how do we build a 21st century co-op?
I think there are probably a good number of people listening right now who don't actually know what a food co-op is.
Yeah.
So if you grew up granola, and if you didn't, you might have never been in one, or if you've been in one, you just thought it was a grocery store. Can you walk me through what is the difference between a food co-op and a hippie grocery store?
Yeah, so a food co-op is a membership store out of a retail location where people pay an annual membership fee to be able to access. Typically, they get some kind of discounted pricing when they make purchases at the health food store. So they typically run as kind of like a hybrid health food store / membership community. So people that are members get slightly better pricing. And for me, I think when I've thought about health and wellness, and I think you guys see this the same way, is how do we strip out the hippiness but keep the heart and soul so that we can reach millions of new Americans that want to access healthy living for the first time. And I think that's our mission as a business, is to really transcend the ideologies and really reach people everywhere. And so that's but having that personal experience growing up with a food co-op and seeing the impact it had in building community with people and making it more affordable for people, I always felt like there's got to be a way to do something like that online for the 21st century.
It's really a tough situation. When I look back at what happened when I was a kid, that helped me to form why I'm doing Bulletproof. For me, my parents also wanted me to eat healthy. Like we weren't desperately poor by a long shot. We weren't stupendously wealthy either. I would say just middle class. But for me, that meant liquid squeezed margarine and like low fat, grape nuts and all sorts of just horrible crap that was toxic for my biology. And today, now we still have this idea where, okay, I'm going to quote eat healthy, and like you seem like you were pretty fortunate. Your mom had financial limited resources, but she had some reasonable knowledge where she actually succeeded in feeding you healthy. Maybe because she was feeding you maybe more the way her parents ate and less the way whatever the current magazine of the 1980s told you to eat, which was desperately wrong in almost every direction. Right. So for me, I'm like, all right, I was obese as a teenager. I have stretch marks still that I haven't figured out how to hack, and grew up with all sorts of autoimmune things, just issues that were caused by these things. I'm like, all right, I want to do it right, and that's one of the things for me. I'm like, it's not that hard when you get the rules right. For you, you're like, it's not that expensive when you get the rules right. But how do you use your business to help people eat the right stuff versus just stuff that's labeled as healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big important question, and I wouldn't claim to have an exactly right answer to that. I think it's an ongoing, evolving question that gets answered a lot of different ways to different communities. I think for us, the way we've constructed our model is that instead of making the traditional retail markup that people pay when they go to a health food store, we pass all of those savings along to our members through $60 a year, and it's like Whole Foods meets Costco. And then for every paid membership, we give a membership away to a family in need. So if you can't afford the $60 to get access to wholesale prices, to have healthy products shipped to your home wherever you are, you can still get a free membership through our giving program. And that's one way we do it. We also invest in educational content. So we just shot a video course with 22 videos, which is like how to read a label and how do carbs turn into sugar and why you should care about toxic ingredients in your cleaning supplies, and just basic stuff that you and I know and most of the listeners know. But, Americans, a lot of people just don't know this information. And so, education, when we think about access and making healthy living accessible to everybody, we see it as a function of price, geography, and education. So selling previously premium products for less, geography, and that we ship it to people wherever they are, if they're in a food desert, and then education in terms of providing content that helps people understand why they should care about these issues and doing it in a way that informs and inspires them. And I think, to your lead in on the fact, there's 43 million Americans on food stamps as an example. Yeah. And the largest source of calories for them is soda. And, we know what that's doing to their bodies.
Yeah. Maybe it's diet soda. They don't even get calories for it, and it does worse things to their bodies. Like, man, that's a losing proposition in every way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let me ask a hard question. I don't know the answer to this because I haven't dug around on the Thrive website. Do you guys sell anything with sucralose in it?
I don't think we do.
Would you?
I no. I mean, if I find, I'm gonna go dig around myself.
Okay.
4,000 products. It's hard to vet everything personally, but yeah, I'll definitely check on that. I mean, we have a very, very stringent guidelines. We're the largest retail in the country that sells only non-GMO foods.
That was my next question. Was what's your deal? So no GMO. What about canola oil? Do you allow that?
Yeah, there's canola oil. Yeah, but
it's such a
non-GMO.
slippery slope, right?
I know. I mean, the thing is, so the way we've approached it is, we've instead of trying to be the most outrageous Puritans, we've really taken a big tent approach. And if that means that people are going to buy healthier marshmallows, and that's what's going to motivate them to get into the ecosystem, we'll choose to sell some marshmallows that are not filled with toxins and preservatives. Obviously, there's sugary content, and then we have an opportunity to be able to have a larger conversation with them. That isn't necessarily the right decision, but it's one strategy.
My kids love s'mores. There's a fire pit right behind the camera here. We built it. The kids absolutely know how to roast marshmallows. Are they allowed to eat 10 of them? No. Do they get 2 organic marshmallows with the Bulletproof chocolate? And actually, I put it on a Mary's Gone cracker. You guys probably sell Mary's crackers, right?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. So I actually don't really like the Mary's cracker taste, but they're kids. That's what a s'more is to them. They don't know what graham crackers taste like, and I'm okay with that. Right. And so that kind of perspective, all right, you're going to do something that isn't perfect, but does that mean you're going to slather it with cyanide and glyphosate and lead and mercury and then eat it? No, you do the least harmful thing. And I totally support that. That's why the whole thing I do is it's all on a spectrum. This is really crappy and you shouldn't ever eat that. This is not that good for you, but you'll probably survive and you can overcome. And this is probably good for you. And if I totally support your Big Tent approach there, because honestly, you're going to eat canola oil. Eat the non-GMO canola oil. It was a win for the day. You did one thing better, right? So,
and our shared friend, Dr. Mark Hyman, one of the great aha moments for me in this journey a couple of years ago when we first met him, he was presenting at Saddleback Church, which was the largest mega church in the country. Designed a meal plan with Pastor Rick Warren, and there were thousands of people in the audience, and it was syndicating live to hundreds of churches. And, he's there talking about avocado, cacao pudding, and quinoa and coconut oil to a very mainstream conservative audience. And I was just floored at how mainstream this conversation is going now. And I think that's really exciting. Health and wellness transcends ideology. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, what you believe. Everybody wants to feel good in their bodies, and everybody wants the same thing for their children. And so you and I are in the business of helping people get healthy.
So now, what percentage of the Thrive customer base is organic preppers?
Organic what?
Preppers.
What's
there's a TV show called Preppers. That people who are preparing for disaster, so they're stockpiling. For the. I'm just wondering because you guys sell in bulk.
I think it's pretty small. We don't do that much bulk. It's everyday sizes.
It's everyday size, but the reason I'm asking that it's a little bit humor, but it's also look, that most preppers tend to be relatively conservative, but it doesn't matter. You want organic food, and if you wanted to plan to eat for a year without having to go to the grocery store, which is actually not a bad idea to be able to be prepared for that, at least several months of food for emergency supplies is prudent, I would say. At least if you understand our food supply, it's prudent. And if you do decide to do that, do you want to stockpile genetically modified corn malt and you'll just eat that with a spoon, or do you want to have good food?
Right. And totally.
If you have good food, then cost becomes important, and then you have to eat from what you have on hand. So then bulk buying or just cost-effective buying, it's not even bulk, it becomes terribly important. So I imagine that you have some people there, but like you said, it transcends all ideologies. So it doesn't matter if you're doing it because you want to be gentle to Mother Earth or because you think an apocalypse is coming. You still want food that makes you feel good, right? And that's why everyone cares about it. So
it plays to people's self-interest in such a powerful way, and as we know, it benefits them, their communities, the economy, with $300 billion a year spent on lifestyle diseases like diabetes every year, and the environment shifting from toxic conventional supply chains to organic and regenerative. So I think for me, it's such a gratifying organizing principle to be part of, and I'm grateful to be collaborating with you on it.
talk to me a little bit about what you do to support farmers. How does Thrive work with the supply chain? I'm really interested in how you do that. So what kind of farms do you work with, and like what's your relationship there with the food producers themselves?
So we're just starting to get into that, but we're doing a push into private label on products where we lose money, but we know we have to provide them to our community, or we have low margins. So for example, coconut oil. So that's an area where we needed to get more margin on the product. We went to our primary partner, and he's got a fantastic fair trade, ethical supply chain in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. And we were very, very careful about, looking at their supply chain. And then we really tell that story to our community. What's happening now is that consumers are waking up to the fact that they want to vote with their dollars, and they really value transparency. Yes, they want to get, great products at a great price, but they also want to, believe and support in things that align with their values. And so our ability to do the work and, really make sure that we're working with ethical supply chains and then be able to share the details of that with our community creates a level of resonance and education that's differentiated than a traditional retail environment.
I think that's really important. I read some things about regenerative farming and carbon farming. Are you doing specific things to support products that come from carbon neutral farming, or even things that are banking carbon?
So that's a new. The whole regenerative farming movement in general is amazing, and a lot of studies coming out showing it's the fastest way to sequester carbon and produce truly nutrient dense food, create great jobs. I mean, I'm on the board of a local regenerative agriculture nonprofit, and help raise the money for them. And I think it's a really exciting area for the American economy in general. For all the reasons I listed. It's very, very new in terms of the supply chain. And so farmers are just starting to, there's all sorts of questions about how do they do labeling and standards. And so there's not a lot that we've been able to do around that actually in our supply chain, but we're having those conversations every week, every month with our partners, our co-packers, our vendors, and really working to encourage them either to move towards those practices or selecting vendors where they can handle the scale of volume that we need. Part of the challenge is you can get really small farmers that can handle a small amount of volume, but because we're selling 20 to 50,000 units of a SKU per month now, the level of volume that we need in a partner is differentiated, and so that's part of the cart horse issue, and we're excited about investing in farms long term to really make that a whole picture.
I saw an interview with the head buyer for Walmart a while back, and this was maybe 4 years ago, and whoever it was, I don't remember the person's name or even whether it was a man or woman. It was a thing I read, and they said, "Look, I would love to put organic cotton in every product sold at Walmart. There's just this little problem. There isn't that much organic cotton produced on the surface of the planet. If we had access to every piece of organic cotton, we couldn't do it.
That's right.
So we don't do it." Are you going to run into that scale where, everyone wants organic blueberries, but there just aren't enough organic blueberries?
Yeah, we already deal with it. And actually, one of the things that I've been thinking about is that there's a need for a transition label. The challenge with organic certification is that it's a 3-year process. It's really expensive, and it's really impacting our ability to meet the demand. And so now we're forced as an economy to import massive amounts of organic produce and food from countries like China and South America, which you got the whole carbon impact of shipping that and all the other types of supply chains. And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to come up with another label that it doesn't mean you're not applying chemicals or fertilizers to it, and it has the same guidelines as organic, but people know it's a transitional label.
It's really tough. The plantations that I work with for the Bulletproof coffee beans, they've never been sprayed. They never will be sprayed. They've been owned by the same families for a long time. And it would take more than 1 year's worth of profits to pay for the organic certification. And so for small farmers, organic certification is like you have to have a separate job in order to do it. My small farm where I live, I'm on 32 acres. And we're putting it into production for the first time. So it's relatively simple to get organic certification because it hasn't been productive farmland. But even then, I almost put asphalt paving on the road coming in, which would have killed my organic certification. Like, how many places don't have asphalt roads? Well, that would because there's a petroleum thing that's involved with that. So now I have a dirt driveway still. I don't know, maybe I'll put gravel on it. But these little things, people who eat food, it's organic or it's not organic. But, it's organic from China. You're like, well, we have no idea whether those were enforced in China or Mexico. And we have no idea how long that food sat, how fresh it is. But at least it was organic. So I fully support that. Like this is at least small farmer based, non-GMO. Like there's a variety of things. And what you get down to is farming is a system. It's a whole set of practices with thousands of decision points. And like, how do you know that the majority of them were done in such a way as to support the world and support the people who eat the food? And man, that is a tough standard to make and to enforce. I support that effort, but it's going to take a while.
I think it will, but I think there's a real opportunity there, and I think it could be done in a thoughtful way that would really expand access and production pretty quickly.
Where I live, up here on Vancouver Island, I've seen a few of the local grocery stores actually purchasing farmland. Yeah. Where they're going either into partnership or just outright purchasing it and saying, look, we need access to high quality organic local vegetables. We've got to guarantee access. We're serving our communities, and buying from a farmer doesn't guarantee that we'll have what we want. So we might as well just do this. Are you going to buy a bunch of farmland, employ a bunch of farmers, and basically be a vertically integrated thing?
I mean, I think it's funny. I was just talking to some of our investors yesterday about that. So it's for us, it's a sequencing issue. But there's a very real likelihood in the next 2 or 3 years we'll end up vertically integrating and then building really showcase regenerative farms.
Yeah, I'm considering the same thing with coffee, because I would want to work with the people I work with now, but I just want to make sure that everything is done right. And right now I know that because I have my lab testing at the end of the process. But if there was an opportunity to partner more with the growers, or to even work directly with a plantation for long term, like, look, if your name's going to go on the label, like it better be done right, and not just mostly right either. Like
and the majors are doing this. I mean, I just saw an article yesterday. Costco just helped a farmer in San Diego buy 1,200 acres across the border in Mexico to launch a big organic farm, and Costco funded it precisely for this issue. It's one of the fastest growing segments of Costco's business is organic food, and they have the same issue. They're at enormous scale, and they can't get their hands on the product. So this is a problem now that's systemic. The good news is it creates demand, and there is a bottleneck with the certification process, but the market is going to have its effect, and there's going to be a lot of solutions that come up in the next 5 to 10 years that meet that demand.
So it'll be really interesting too, though. Like what happens, let's say, with a membership model like Costco or with Thrive, let's say. So then let's put on our futurist hat. 10 years from now, Thrive is this ginormous multi-billion-dollar thing, and let's say you have access. We'll say control of 10% of America's cropland.
That's a big number, but okay.
I'm making up these numbers, right? But let's say a meaningful percentage of this stuff. It's very different in a world like that. Where let's say Walmart has this slice, Costco has this slice, Thrive has this slice, and Safeway has this slice, and whatever, Amazon has this other slice. Like, who knows what the future looks like? But essentially, there's a series of big companies, some nicer than others, who are now vertically integrating into this thing. What happens with the control of the food supply then with things like small farmers? Like, where do they fit into that ecosystem? And what do you think will happen with the vertical integration? Like what's the best model for that when you think about this, like going out more than 5 years?
I don't think we have to own farms specifically. I think that there's ways for us to be supportive to farmers in a way that gives us the stability and guarantee of output while not being intensely hierarchical in a way that's destructive to small farmers. And even like on the regenerative agriculture piece, one of the things that I've been talking about with the board there is, we need to create free educational toolkits that are like turnkey for farmers that depend upon, one of the 7 major biozones that you would have in the US. And you could just follow these free turnkey programs, how to convert your farm into a regenerative farm. And it gives people step-by-step educational content that helps them do that. And so I think there's a lot of ways that we can be very beneficial in the ecosystem, particularly as we get scale and the amount of money it takes for us to have a tremendous impact for people starts to be a smaller and smaller part of our overall revenue base. And so I think we're going to be able to leverage that in really dynamic ways.
So some of the things that a lot of people don't know, I saw this shocking statistic, like 90% of small farmers have a day job. They cannot put food on their table by farming. They can put, actually that's not true. They can put food on their table. They just can't put money in their bank account with small farming. Even if they go to the local farmers market on weekends and all that, they're not quite making ends meet. And the amount of work, oh my God, like some of our family friends, they're on a 5-acre farm, which is plenty big enough to grow way more food than you could ever eat in a fertile valley like where we live. And even with feeding a couple cows and raising everything, it's just 16-hour a day, just huge amounts of labor. And at the end of the day, by the time you paid for animal food and you did all that stuff, it's like break even. And to the point they're thinking about shutting the farm down because they just can't do it. And I think most people would say, "Oh, I'm supporting small farmers," and they go to the farmers market and they try to negotiate for $1 off. Like, that might have been the only dollar of profit that was out there.
Right.
Do you think that Thrive and what you're doing with Thrive might have the power to change that, like to make it easier or make it more profitable, or like with these
the beautiful thing about our model is that we cut out all the middlemen in the supply chain, right? So that allows us to work with partners where they can actually make more money working with us. It's simpler, it's easier. We can tell their story in a really beautiful way with our content and recipes and videos, talk about their supply chain, and they can make more money and still pass savings along to our members. And so, when you think about a traditional supply chain, there's the grower, the manufacturer, the brokers, the distributors, the slotting fees, the retail games, the pay-to-play, all the stuff that happens in shelf space and play-to-play games. And by being able to cut all of that out and go direct to consumer to our members with a really efficient supply chain, we're actually able to pay more to our partners and pass the savings along to our members. And it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Most people listening to this don't know about the incredibly complex and Byzantine grocery supply chain. If a product costs $1 at the register, can you walk through who gets what percentage of that dollar for the average product that you might sell on Thrive?
I mean, it really depends on the product and the product category. But let's say something costs $10 because that's an easier one.
Sure,
so if it's $10, the actual brand that actually manufactures that, not even the farmer, but just the brand, they'll, depending upon the margin and what type of product they're selling, they'll be lucky if they get $3 to $5 of that 10 that's sold at retail. And then the rest of that $5 to $7 goes to the brokers, the distributors, and the retail player, and all the retail play-to-play games that happen on the shelf space.
So people listening to this right now, think about that number. So if you spent $10, the person who manufactured and produced that product got $3 of that $10, and the rest of it went to inefficiencies in the supply chain.
That's right.
And that's why when you go with something like e-commerce, you're basically taking that $7 and you're redistributing it in a different way. But on the other hand, if you go to Whole Foods and you have access to fresh stuff that you might not be able to get online, and you have access to a whole suite of products that are generally hard to get in one place. So it's an interesting conundrum because like what's the cost of convenience? And do you really care if the producer of that product got $3 or $4? My take on that is actually you should care whether the producer gets $3 or $4, because if you're dealing with an ethical producer, they're going to make better products versus squeezing every last nickel out. And I find there's two types of consumers out there, at least when I'm working on the Bulletproof side. There's what I call like the mercenaries, and they're like, I want to eat the cheapest food possible, right? And like to that mindset, it's almost like a victory to squeeze a nickel out of the food that they're eating. And then there's other people who say, look, I want to eat the highest quality food first, that is most affordable second. And I'm in that category, right? Like I want food that makes me feel amazing. I'm willing to pay more for it, but I don't want to pay a lot more for it. But that extra value I'm getting, like I'll pay for quality. And if I was starving, I wouldn't pay for quality. Except even then, if you have only $1 to spend on this meal, you're going to buy the highest quality meal you can get for $1. You'll always do that. But when you have more than $1, are you willing to spend $1.10? How do you differentiate between like the mercenary, like I want the very, very cheapest thing possible, versus I want the best thing possible? Like how do you navigate that for consumers who come to Thrive? Like how do you guide them in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, what's cool is, again, we're big tent, so we're happy to have both those consumers. And because it's such a disintermediated supply chain where we've cut out the middleman, we can, pay our brands more. We can pass along really significant savings of 25 to 50% off these products to the members, and we can cover our costs so we break even on the products. And so, that plays to self-interest, and whether or not you're, really, really scrounging and you're optimizing for every dollar, or whether you're, interested in the lifestyle and want to vote with your dollars and you're really interested in the absolute highest quality, we can appeal to both of those consumers. And it's really easy for us to work with both of those. And we work with a lot of other types of consumers. It's people that are in food deserts, or people that aren't near a health food store to begin with, or they're, in a low income neighborhood, or they're a community of color, or there's all sorts of, so we have a lot of different demographic groups that we interact with and support. And what's cool is like over half of our customer is in the South and the Midwest. It's not on, most people would think that our customer base is concentrated in California and New York. And so what's really exciting for us as a business is that we're helping people access healthy food, often for the first time because they can afford it. Our buyer, the person who's buying from us at Thrive, by and large, is a woman. She shops at Target or Kohl's. She's accessing healthy food often for the first time because she can afford to do it and she wants to do it, but it's been out of her reach historically.
Yeah, that's really helping people in a meaningful way. So I applaud that. I've been on lots of road trips, and for a long time, I've eaten in a certain way because when I eat stuff that maybe other people tolerate better than I do, I have a history of obesity and autoimmunity and all, this stuff's kryptonite. Like I eat it, I'm going to feel awful. I don't like to feel awful, especially when I'm driving across the country or something. So there's lots of times you're like, in this entire state, there's only two places where I really wanted to find something to eat.
Right.
And that's not to say that I feel like I'm being persnickety or something, but you're like, look, I don't know how you possibly deep fry a salad, but like every restaurant in this town deep fries their salads, probably because they didn't have any fresh lettuce. I'm not joking, actually. That was in Scotland, not in the US. But anyway, it's one of those things where you realize, okay, this isn't food in the way I define food, because if I eat it, I'm going to feel crappy. And certainly I'm not going to perform it at my best level. And that's what I do every day. Having a shift like this that says, all right, even if you live in a town like that, now I can get the food that I want and it's affordable. That changes things in a way that having a Walmart downtown won't do. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, one of the benchmarks that we try to really aim our business at is, can we sell healthy alternatives at the same price or less than the conventional equivalent? So, we sell a Kind bar for the same price or less than a Snickers bar. We sell 70 loads of non-toxic laundry detergent for the same for less than a big box retailer will sell 70 loads of laundry detergent with hormone and endocrine disruptors. And so, for us, when we're looking at our catalog and how do we provide products, what we're trying to do is make the products equal in price to the conventional equivalent or less. And if we can do that, that's hyper scalable.
But Gunnar, endocrine disruptors smell so fresh.
Exactly. They're so fresh and clean. I saw an ad yesterday that I can't say the name obviously, but it
Yeah.
was for one of the big CPG cleaning companies, and it was an ad on a major site, and it said, and it was touting as if it was like a big exciting thing. It was made of 90% cleaning ingredients, and then under it says, keep out of reach of children. And I was just like, what an odd ad. Like, to think that that's even an effective ad to advertise that your cleaning products are made of 90% cleaning ingredients without even specifying what that even means, and then have this bold warning that you got to keep the cleaning product out of reach of children. I was like, this is completely insane.
Last time I checked, water was a cleaning ingredient.
You're right.
Like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Oh, well, it's amazing what people will buy. We've certainly trained them that way. I want to shift gears a bit, since we're talking about endocrine disruptors and hormones, things like that. When we've had dinner together, you talked about being a self-proclaimed hypochondriac. You really are monitoring what's going on with your biology. Like, what do you do? Like what do you obsess about the most? Like where'd that come from?
I think it's like, deep survival fears, growing up really poor, and we inherit some of these thought forms
Sure.
and patterns from our parents, and my mother was very, very concerned all the time. So it's I think we're all confronted with our various neurotic intellectual conditioning that we all have various flavors of it, and one of mine is hypochondria. I'm gratefully much better than I used to be, but I used to just obsess about cancer and heart disease. As a teenager, I would just be like, I'd feel a lump under my lymph node, and I'd be like, for months, completely terrified that I
Wow.
was, finally going to die of lymphatic cancer. 13-year-old boy. So that kind of,
That's true hypochondria. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Full blown. At the same time, though, that led me into understanding and pursuing information about health and wellness in a powerful way. And it led me to having to look at other types of interpersonal skills and development. So looking at fear and what's the root of the fear, and having a really honest conversation with oneself about where that arises from. And so it's been like a both a blessing and a curse. And I know you can understand that one with your own journey. And I think, we're all confronted with those in different ways. And none of us are all that unique in the fact that we all have our mixed bag of cards that that make us who we are.
It's funny. I used to wonder if I was a hypochondriac, especially like back in 1992. People are like, "You're a hypochondriac." I'm like, actually, no. I just feel shitty. There's a difference. In my case, I actually did have autoimmune stuff, and I'm like, I am kind of fat. So okay, it turns out there was a connection between what I ate and what I did, and
Right.
whether or not I got a sinus infection or
Right.
or one of those things. But like you said, it's a curse, but also it means that you have a very survival-based motivation that says, I'm going to learn about this stuff. I'm going to get it right, because whether it's perceived threat or an actual threat, like I'm going to own this stuff because I don't want to walk around with that hanging over my head.
Yeah, I think and I know for me, and I know in your work, your work is really vulnerably and honestly sharing the depths of your personal challenges. And I think that as we move through those challenges that we're all dealt with, we actually become better human beings. And as we're able to be honest about our ability to move through these things and still be affected by them periodically, it inspires other people to confront their own challenges at a very profound level. And I think, I used to be overweight as a teenager too, and for me, I wasn't like the physiological type of autoimmune stuff that you were up against. I was depressed, and that's the other part of obesity and being overweight is there's an emotional component to it, and a lot of it's the type of food we're eating, but it's also a lot of people feel hopeless in their lives, or they're depressed, or there's emotional issues that are unresolved. And so I think there's such an amazing conversation for us to have now about these issues holistically, and food and lifestyle is a critical part of it. But then also really getting access to the tools that give us a way to empower ourselves from the traditional fears and beliefs that we've been conditioned with.
A lot of that programming you get in the first 7 years, it runs in there. You think that programming is actually your personality, and it's not.
Right.
And that knowledge, that model, it isn't taught in school. They don't teach you that at college. So you sort of go through this whole education process, and you come out of it, and you're just as programmed as you were before. And then you have to, so. Yeah, maybe more so. And then you have to sit down and go, all right, like, how am I going to deal with this? I've found that for most people, you need to hit a pretty bad place in order to take a look at it. Otherwise, like, you can live a relatively okay life, fully programmed, and right. it's a life of mediocrity, so to speak. But if you basically hit a wall along the way, you'll probably have to look around a little bit more.
It's desperation, right? We get backed into a corner, and we either are going to work through it, or we literally won't survive. And I think a lot of people can relate to that desperation, and I think that it's one of the things that's driving people to so passionately vote with their dollars and try to understand companies that support their values, and the personal development movement. I mean, there's so many aspects to it that I think, as the dark is dark, the light is light, and people want to empower themselves in a way that's, truly transformational right now.
You talked about voting with your dollars. We also have a presidential election. What do you think is more important for someone to do? To support organic stuff and to buy organic foods, or to vote for one candidate or another?
I mean, I think they're both important.
That was a politician's answer. Come on, man.
Yeah, it is. I think that ultimately, I think what's interesting is, so we work with Environmental Working Group, EWG. And
I'm a supporter as well.
Ken is amazing. And I heard a speech he gave, and it was really interesting. In the 60s, the government drove all sorts of amazing innovation around Clean Water Act and all sorts of things that were like we just take for granted today, that are part of the bedrock of how we maintain and manage our society and our economy. None of those types of regulations can get passed today, period. Like we live in a dysfunctional political system where even the most rational ideas just get completely polarized. And so I think we're in a place now where innovation used to be driven in the 50s and the 60s from the government, top down. And I think we're in this really exciting place now where innovation is being driven from the bottom up, from people voting with their dollars. Yeah. And you have companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's and, all scrambling to try to figure out how to stay relevant in the 21st century to a consumer that has a different set of values than they position themselves for.
Where you spend your money will likely have a bigger impact than whichever person you vote for. Right. In a major election like that. And it didn't used to be that way, but it sure looks to be that way to me. And I say that I live in Canada, right? But that's my perception of how things work now. And I think every time I spend $1, like where's this dollar going, and does it go to something that I want to have happen? And if not, can I spend that dollar somewhere else? Because that every one of those dollars is a vote, and it's probably it's probably no more or less expensive of a vote than the other ones.
And it's interesting, we are in a time where, particularly if you've got some educational access and means, you're going to use a phone and a computer that was probably made in very compromised labor conditions. Most of our phones were made in, really devastating circumstances. And, we are inherently participating in a global economy now that doesn't represent the true costs of making the items that we consume. And I think that's one of the great challenges that we face, which, voting with our dollars and transparency is going to drive a lot more awareness around what are the true costs of the products we consume, not only to ourselves, but to other people and other communities and the environment.
It gets a little more complex too. Like what would happen if a company approached you and they had organic produce that was raised by prisoners who were not paid a living wage?
Right.
What would you do?
Yeah, we wouldn't take that. I mean, that's completely.
But wouldn't that be better than GMO crops produced by prisoners, which is happening in the U.S. right now?
Right. Yeah.
It's such an ethical slippery slope. By the way, I would do the same thing. I say, guys, that's not cool. Privatized prisons, not okay.
Yeah.
And using prisoners as labor like that, no, not okay.
Yeah.
But it's an ethically slippery slope. And so what I hope that people listening to it is they realize, it matters where you buy your stuff. It matters which stuff you buy. And it matters way more than you think, because it comes down to, are the people you're buying it from going to take what's left after all of the costs are done, and are they going to do good things with it? Are they going to act like Costco? They pay much more than other retailers and they have good benefits. You have a philosophical decision that says, your employees all get the same benefits you do as a CEO, right? Like, does it matter to someone who's buying a jar of peanut butter online? Well, it should matter. And if people realize that they don't have to spend more, then it's basically a free thing you get when you buy it. And right. That's my perspective. Every time I spend something, I get that for free. And it goes down to, if you're going to go into the store, I go to the register with an employee there instead of the self-serve checkout. You know what? I like jobs. Like, I want people around me to have jobs.
Yeah.
Because when they have jobs, they're happier. And when no one has a job, people generally steal stuff from each other, and it's not a very nice place to live.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the challenges with the whole, sharing economy now. There's so much disruption. Technology is going to disrupt traditional jobs in a much more quickly than they can shift to new types of jobs. And it's going to create all sorts of interesting and dynamic and potentially dangerous populist strands that cause all sorts of dynamic issues for us as a society. And I think I think the thing that is so exciting, though, back to the voting with dollars piece, is that we are in a world where the biggest companies have quarterly earning reports, and it doesn't actually take much of a contraction in their business to send them into really deep, profound hand-wringing. And now we're seeing the first organic hamburger in Germany from McDonald's, and we're seeing General Mills has now announced that its entire supply chain is going to be non-GMO, and Campbell's Soup is going non-GMO. So it doesn't actually take that much of a slowdown or a decrease in revenue and profit for these big companies to suddenly see that they actually need to wake up to the demands of this consumer that is gaining steam and using the internet to educate and empower themselves and to vote with their dollars.
That is, it's very true. And I've seen such rapid change as a 20% revenue fall for McDonald's. Like, I wanted to just dance in the street. The funny thing is, I don't see McDonald's. Like, when I drive down the street, my brain stopped identifying that as a place to eat. So the logo doesn't have an effect on me. The store doesn't. And people say it's by McDonald's. I go, where's McDonald's? Like, it's not a landmark, because I literally learned to not see it. I don't know how you recover from that. My kids, they know that that's not a place you go for food. One of our nannies decided that she wanted to go to McDonald's to get, and yes, this is embarrassing, to get coffee. It's because there's bulletproof coffee at my house all the time, right?
Right.
But she was out and about with the kids, so I wasn't that happy about it. But she took the kids to the drive-thru, and they're like, "You can drive through to get food? Oh my God!" Because we don't do fast food,
right?
And so she rolls the window down, and my daughter, who's maybe 5 at the time, she sees that you could talk to this speaker, and our nanny says, I'd like a coffee or whatever. And Anna just can't help herself. She goes, I'd like a poopy chemical latte, please.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which to her was like the worst thing you could possibly ask for, right? Because she knows that that McDonald's puts chemicals in food. And that is the brand value of McDonald's to my kids. And every one of her kids, her friends at school, all of them, same thing. McDonald's does not equate food. It doesn't equate fun. It doesn't equate happiness. And you know what? I'm not sure that selling an organic hamburger is ever going to recover from that. Like, they might have destroyed their brand by destroying the ecosystem and by doing all the bad stuff they did. And maybe the brand will recover. Maybe they'll do enough good that it'll recover. It's going to take an awful lot for me to want to ever eat there again. I just don't have a fundamental trust there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think there's a real credibility gap there. That said, you look at the way, and obviously Chipotle has been going through massive issues with the breakouts that it's been having, but they've invested in a way that's really differentiated, and I think it has translated as a brand. And they're investing in farms and organic and regenerative agriculture, and I think that's translated to them as a brand. And ironically, they used to be owned by McDonald's. And McDonald's sold Chipotle, and Chipotle got religion on, appealing to an aspirational consumer, and it's really driven a lot of success, notwithstanding the recent issues on their breakouts.
Are you a fan of Clayton Christensen, the disruptive technology author? Are you familiar with his work and strategy?
I'm not, but I'm a fan of disruption in general. So conceptually, I think I'm a fan.
I had disruptive technology in almost all of my job descriptions throughout my time in Silicon Valley. Like it was always something I worked with. And Clayton, and actually got to work with this consulting company once. He's a famous Harvard guy who coined the term disruptive innovation. And you'd probably enjoy his book. I forget what it's called, but it's a big book about it. What he did is he looked at the history of hard drive manufacturers in Silicon Valley. And because it's such a fast cycle there, you can study things that happen in other industries. He started out by looking at railroads and how railroads disrupted each other and got disrupted, and sort of went through tech. And in hard drives, what happens is these upstart young Turks come along, and 18 months later, they're buying the companies who said, that stuff will never work, right? It literally 18 months later, and it happens over and over. And he studied, why does disruption happen? And what I'm seeing is the stuff that I cut my teeth on in Silicon Valley, where the telephone companies got disrupted by data centers, by cloud computing and social media, and all this stuff happens. It's happening in food right now. And like companies like Thrive, companies out there who, like Chipotle, they came out of nowhere, and the big guys are kind of scratching their head going, what do? We don't even know what to do. And what you do is your revenues decline a bunch, and then you get acquired, and then they gut your storefront and put their logo on your store. And I think some of that's going to happen over the next few years in a way that no one would ever predict, except Clayton. He would predict it. So that'd be a good book for you to read.
And I think one of the interesting facts is, you look at Whole Foods is the largest retailer that people recognize in the health and wellness movement. Yeah. Now there's other people like Kroger and Costco that are in the system, but their market cap is $10 billion as one of the largest retailers and the most famous retailer for healthy food. And they've really galvanized the movement in a way. Like, they've had their challenges and their problems, and they've got their reputation, but they really brought the movement together in a really powerful way. And we're all the beneficiaries of that now with our new models. And I think you look at their market cap relative to, say, Chipotle, which is one of a dozen fast food, companies in this country, and it has, 2.5 times the market cap, $25 billion. One of several fast food companies in this country is 2.5 times the size of one of the largest health food providers in this country. And that's really an interesting fact in terms of where the market is going and how much opportunity there is for this thing to shift. The sales for natural and organic products is, $50 to $75 billion a year for the food itself, growing at 15% per year. And even at that size, it's still only 4% of the national CPG economy. So, even at that size, only 4% of total consumer packaged goods sales is natural and organic products. And, that again just shows you how this is going to go over the next 10 or 20 years. People are going to move towards accessing food that is healthy and putting products on their bodies which are non-toxic. And I think, we're in a really unique, blessed situation to be able to facilitate that journey in a way that's authentic and meaningful and empowering to people. And I that's, to me, super exciting.
It is a really cool time to be working in this strange area of providing the right food to people so that they feel amazing, which kind of goes beyond health food. But it wasn't this easy without the internet, without the cloud, without all the technology that supports it. Now it's really cool, and now's the time for that. So this disruption is a lot of fun, and certainly what you're doing with Thrive is a part of it.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you that you probably would have predicted if you've listened to any of the shows before. If someone came to you tomorrow, Gunnar, and they're like, look, I want to perform better at every single thing I do in my life, based on all the stuff you know, not just your business, what are the 3 most important things I should do? What advice would you have?
I mean, my important pieces are getting enough sleep, courageously facing my fears every day, and eating well and getting exercise. And I feel like if I do those 3 things, I kind of slipped in a 4th there by eating well and getting exercise. It sounds like basic stuff, but just like just the simple thing of like eating simple foods, chewing it well, not eating complex meals, not eating 2 hours before you go to bed, going to bed early, getting enough sleep. And then really doing the interpersonal work of like we all have issues that we're confronted with in our life, and the opportunity for us is to meet those issues with love and courage, and recognize that we're not going to get over them instantly, and it's a process. But to the extent that we can meet those things that we're afraid of, we will be better, stronger human beings that can add a lot more value to the world.
Very well said. Thanks a lot for being on the show. People can go to thrivemarket.com to learn more about this and to get some food at a good discount. Have an awesome day, Gunnar.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you know what to do. Go on to iTunes and click, hey, I like this show, so then other people can find it. There's some sort of rating review process. I forget what it is. But if you go in there and say, Bulletproof Radio is helping me, that will help others. We just crossed 30 million downloads and climbing. That is 65 entire human lifetimes, if I did my math right, depending on how long you believe you're going to live. So it is my responsibility to not have murdered 65 human beings by making crappy content. I put everything I have into the show for you so that you can learn something and walk away after you hear every show knowing something you didn't know before that's going to help you perform better. Have a beautiful day, and thank you. Thanks for watching. Get tons more original info to make it easier to kick more ass at life when you sign up with the free newsletter at bulletproofexec.com. Thanks for watching, and stay bulletproof.